to look at the question of uncertainty. We live in uncertain times. So what is the cure for uncertainty? How do you deal with uncertainty? How do you deal with uncertainty? Are you uncertain about the future? Are you uncertain about your life? Are you uncertain about things going on in your life? How do you deal with uncertainty? I think the problem with uncertainty, when I'm not sure about what's going to happen or how things are going to play out or what the next step needs to be or all of those things, it puts me in a position where I really can't, I'm on uncharted territory. And I can't figure my way out of this. I can't think through this in the right way. I don't know the answers. And so it makes me needy, and that makes me a little uncomfortable because I'm going to be honest with you, I don't like to be needy. I don't know about you, but I don't like to be needy. I hate needs. I fight to not be needy. I don't want to need you, and you don't want to need me, and I don't want to need God. I don't want to need anybody else. I want to be able to, I got this. I can figure it out. I mean, we're Americans. We can figure this out ourselves. We pulled ourselves up by our own bootstraps. We don't need anybody else. We can do this on our own. But that's just not reality. It's not reality. You do have needs, and I have needs. And needs aren't necessarily our enemy. In fact, to be honest, needs are really our friend. Needs are really our friend. In fact, they're the doorway to God. Needs, being needy, is the doorway to meeting God. Until you recognize your need, you're not going to meet God. God has nothing for you because you do it on your own. Oh, no, you got this. Okay, go ahead. Until you're really to recognize that you need Him and you can't do this on your own, then you're really not opening the door. You're not inviting God to intervene and to come into and to begin to give answers or direction or hope or peace or help you make the next step or provide. Needs are a doorway to God, but most people don't want to pursue God. Most people aren't going to pursue God unless they are needy. It just takes needs to recognize our need for God. Apart from being confronted with our needs and uncertainty of the future, we won't pursue God. We'll try to do things on our own. The struggle in that is that we think we know what's best for ourselves. Isn't that true? We think we know. I think I know what's the best plan for me, right? I think I know what's the best way forward, but what I think is good for me often turns out to not be good for me. I mean, what we think is best for us, more often than not, is usually not God's best for us. It's not really the best thing often. And yet, you can look at the Psalms. Psalms 84:11 says, "No good thing does He withhold from those who walk uprightly." I mean, God wants to help us in uncertainty. He wants to help us in our need. He wants to come through. He wants to provide for us, but we don't want that. We resist that because we don't think that God has our best interest in mind, and we don't really trust God to come through in the way that we think He's supposed to come through. And when He doesn't come through the way that we think He's supposed to come through, then we blame Him. Yet we get the fruit of our own self-sufficiency. We get the fruit of our own selfishness. We get the fruit of our own attempts to try to construct a way forward, to try to figure our way out of this situation, to try to meet our own needs, to try to navigate uncertainty. We get the fruit of that, and then we blame God for that. Well, it's just God doesn't love me because He just let this happen, that happen, and whatever. And yet the Bible says, no good thing does He withhold from those who walk with Him. To walk with Him is to recognize your need and to be in a right relationship with Him. And so if you're walking uprightly, God's not withholding any good thing from you. If you're dealing with something unpleasant in your life, then you have to ask this question. If God is going to allow this unpleasant trial in my life, if God has allowed or brought this unpleasant trial into my life, then it must be for my good. Then it really must be for my good. That's a game changer. It's a game changer when that subtle but massive shift in your mind where you go, you know what, if God has allowed these things in my life, then it has to be for my good and for His glory. And that's the context that we're reading James and the struggles there, which I'm sure it reflects all of our lives. This is very close to where all of us are living. And so what's the wisdom as we continue through this beautiful letter that we have today? Well, picking up in verse 4, let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete. And here's the key word: lacking in nothing. Lacking in nothing. That steadfastness, when it has its full effect, you're going to be perfect, complete, lacking in nothing. You're not going to be falling short. You're not going to be inferior. You're going to have what it takes. You're going to have your needs met. And so the goal is that we would be consider it joy, count it up, add it up, do the math, and realize it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. If there's trials and tribulations in our life, God has put them there, allowed them, caused them, whatever you want to use, for our good, for His glory, and it's there for a good reason. It's going to teach us some steadfastness, perseverance. We're going to be able to endure under the pressure with His help. And so as we're enduring this, He's perfecting, He's showing us that He has everything we need, and we're not going to lack. He's going to provide for us. And so that's how we ended the first little paragraph, and then he gets to the next part, and he says this, because here's the question you might be asking. Well, I don't understand that. I don't really know how to move forward here. I'm uncertain. I'm unsure about the future. The Bible says we're supposed to count it all joy, but that's easy to say. It's difficult to do. And so here's the question you have to ask. Do I want relief? Do I want relief? Do I want a way out? Or would I rather have wisdom? If you're in a crisis, you give you two doors you can walk through. Okay, here's your way out. You can go through this door, and it will give you instant relief. Crisis is over. The pain's gone. Or we could send you through this door, and it's going to give you wisdom. And through that door, the crisis won't necessarily be over, and the relief isn't going to be immediate, but you're going to have some discernment, and you're going to have some wisdom, and you're going to be able to navigate it in such a way that these trials are not wasted, that God uses them to shape and to grow you. Which one would you pick? And so he says, if you lack, if any of us lacks, if we recognize that I do fall short, I am inferior, I don't have what it takes, I am uncertain about the future, I do recognize I'm needy. If anybody comes to that point, and you're willing to come to that point, what do you do? What do you do? Well, if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask. Let him ask for God. Let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith with no doubting, for the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. For that person must not suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in his ways. And so the first thing we want to learn this morning, want to recognize, is that we need to recognize our need for wisdom. A way out is not really the best thing. More importantly, we really need wisdom. Simple. Recognize your need and then ask God for wisdom. Let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given. So recognize your need for wisdom. Let's talk about wisdom for a moment. What is wisdom? There's lots of different versions of wisdom. I mean, there's wisdom, but then there's lots of versions of wisdom. So let's define our terms here a little bit, okay? There's a lot of people that have knowledge. They have information. There's experts in certain divisions. I mean, they're some of the smartest people in the world. Some of the people, they have the most credentialed people out there in whatever given subject might have incredible knowledge about a given subject, but they're educated beyond their intelligence. You ever met those people? Educated beyond their intelligence. I mean, they might not be able to get out of the building without somebody helping them, right? They might not be able to boot up their computer without somebody, but they're brilliant in this area or that area, but there's other areas where there's a disconnect, right? And so just because you have information and knowledge doesn't mean you have wisdom and let's go a step further, understanding. So when we're talking about wisdom from the biblical perspective, the big difference between wisdom and knowledge is, again, you can have great knowledge but little wisdom. Wisdom is how to appropriate the knowledge. It's how to take these things and to see how they relate to God. James actually goes on in chapter 3 and gives us a contrast wisdom, and we'll just look briefly. Chapter 3, verse 15 gives us some description about worldly wisdom that is from the earthly wisdom, worldly wisdom, and then wisdom that is from above. And so in chapter 3, verse 15, let's just start in verse 13. Who is wise and understanding among you? Who has wisdom? Well, let's see. How do you know who has wisdom? Well, by his good conduct, let him show his works in the meekness of wisdom. So wisdom, one of the things we see about godly wisdom is it's meek. It's power under control. It's not arrogant. It's not prideful. There's a humility with godly wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast and be false to the truth. This is not the wisdom that comes down from above. So there's wisdom that comes from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder in every vile practice. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. And a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. So two kinds of wisdom. There's worldly wisdom that is from below, and then there's godly wisdom that comes from above. And the godly wisdom, some of the traits of that is when you see godly wisdom, it's going to be pure, it's going to be peaceable, it's going to be gentle, it's open to reason. You can reason with somebody who has godly wisdom. They're open to what God might be doing in the situation or what your perspective is, and they're discerning in those things. They're full of mercy, full of good fruits. They're impartial. They're impartial. Just think about what's going on with the whole racism issue in our nation. I mean, this is one of the few times that there has been an act from one human to another human that has brought about universal, just about almost universal, consistent condemnation from all segments of society. I mean, anybody that has eyeballs, that has watched the video of what happened in Minneapolis, they with their own eyes, they see this is wrong. This is wrong. It's wrong. It's just wrong. Is there more to the situation? Perhaps there might be more to the situation, but it doesn't really matter. It's wrong. And you know what's difficult for us? It's hard for us even to have a healthy conversation about it. Why? Because we don't have wisdom from above. It's hard to have a healthy, mature conversation without people trying to push an agenda or make a point or trying to show that they're woke or trying to show that they're hip and they understand and that they know and that this and that and whatever, trying to make sure that they get their props on social media by coming out on this side or that side or whatever. And again, I think we should take a stand. We should make it clear this is wrong. It's an injustice and it's wrong. But boy, we need some of the wisdom from above that's full of mercy and good fruits and is impartial. And it's sincere. It's not just trying to get some woke points, but it's really sincere. It's really, your heart breaks when you see any human treated like that gentleman was treated. There's no justification for the actions that were brought against him. Well, how do we find a way forward? Well, we need justice. We need to rework the judicial system, right? We need to reelect new leaders. We need to get rid of leaders. We need to get rid of those that are put. What we need is wisdom from above. That's what we need. Man, we need some wisdom from above to discern, to work through, to come together, to be able to process through these things. That's the only hope, is wisdom from above. Because just think in context of what's going on right now in our nation, that wisdom from above is pure, it's peaceable, it's gentle, it's open to reason. You can talk through things, you can process, you can hear what the other person is really saying. What are they really saying, rather than listening till they will be quiet so you can make your points. They're like hearing where you're coming from. Let me understand why you're hurt. And then it produces good fruits and is impartial, sincere. And boy, we need in our nation a harvest of righteousness sown in peace by those who make peace. Boy, we need more men and women. And I trust, man, that's where I would ask you, please, to pray for the pastors, especially African-American pastors in those cities, that God would give them favor with people, that they would be able to articulate the gospel, point people to Christ, and they begin to sow seeds that would lead to peace and bring revival in our urban cities and in our suburban cities and across our land. Boy, that would be awesome. But wisdom from above. There's wisdom from the world. Wisdom from above, pure, peaceable, all those things. Wisdom from the earth, earthly wisdom. It's on earth. It's contrasting. It's the origin of the other wisdom, which is from heaven. It's the world's thinking. It's natural wisdom. It's fleshly wisdom. It's unspiritual. Literally, he calls it worldly, natural, and demonic. Worldly, natural, and demonic wisdom. And where do you find that? Well, wherever you find jealousy and selfish ambition, people with their own agendas, you're going to find disorder and you're going to find worldly wisdom. Disturbance, trouble, instability, anarchy. That's some of the descriptions of the word disorder. What is disorder? It's disturbance, it's trouble, it's instability, it's anarchy. So when you see these things play out, what are we seeing? We're just seeing, well, what started with disorder coming from some officers that now has led to disorder coming from the streets and from the community, and all of it is earthly wisdom on display in exposing our need for a cure that we only find in Christ. We got to recognize our need. Recognize our need for true godly wisdom. And so what is it that we need wisdom for? We need wisdom to help us navigate the challenges in our lives, the uncertainty of our lives. And so when you recognize you need it, then you ask for it. You ask for it. Let him ask God, literally to petition God. To petition God. And it's kind of a command. Let him, it's like James is saying, if you recognize your need, if you're not sure what to do, recognize you need wisdom and ask God. Ask God. I'm commanding you to ask God for wisdom. Ask God for wisdom. Ask God for it. I just don't know. If God's not going to come through, he's not going to. No, he gives it generously. What it means, purely and simply, with an open heart, unconditionally, without bargaining. There's no negotiation with God. God, will you give me wisdom? If you give me wisdom, I'll do this, I'll do that, No. God doesn't play games like that. There's nothing you can give him to repay him. There's nothing you can give him that's going to make him go, oh, well, okay, that's enough. All right, I'm going to give you a little more wisdom today since you gave me a little more or whatever. The biggest thing you can give him is the recognition of what he knows to be true, and that is that you and I are pathetically needy. And so when we come to that awareness and we go, I really need God's help, that's the gift you can give him, is an accurate assessment of who you really are and the state you're really in, and to recognize, I need you, God. I need your help. And he will give generously, simply, without conditions. He is glad to come through. He wants to provide for us. He wants to give us that wisdom generously, without reproach. I love this. He gives wisdom without reproach. He doesn't rebuke us. He doesn't insult us. God's never going to say, why are you so needy? I've got news for you. You probably have heard from your parents or felt from your parents at some point in your life the feeling of a sense of, why are you so needy in this area? Or from a friend, from a family member, from somebody. You've had somebody tell you or imply or think, for that matter, if you don't realize it, what is your deal? Why are you so needy? And I've got news for you. All of us have limits, right? We can only handle so much. I mean, we love one another. When I help one another, but at some point, we come to an end of ourselves, and we don't know how to give them what, because we can't ultimately meet their needs. I mean, nobody on earth can ultimately meet your needs like Jesus alone can. And so at some point you have to recognize, I need wisdom. I have needs. I need wisdom to navigate the world I'm in. And so when you recognize that need, you come to that awareness of yourself and of that need. And you come to God and you say, God, I need wisdom. I don't know what to do. God's never going to go, you just asked for that like 30 minutes ago. I mean, come on. You can ask once a day. You can ask twice a day. Once an hour, a couple times an hour. You get 6 I need wisdom asks a day. That's what you get. Now, God loves to respond to need. You don't believe me? Read the Gospels. Just read the Gospels. Read the Gospels and watch who Jesus responds to. Watch who Jesus runs to. Watch who Jesus meets. Jesus always responds. Jesus always meets the people that recognize they're needy. The louder you shout, I need you, the quicker Jesus is going to respond. He freely, openly loves to meet our needs. Might not meet them the way you want. Might not meet them in a way that's aligned with your agenda, your preference, what you think you need, what you think is best for you, what you think is good. Because again, God doesn't withhold anything good from those who walk uprightly from him. And so if he's withholding something from you, if he's not responding to your confession of need or wants, and we don't always discern between those two things. Sometimes we're asking God, we might not ask God really truly for needs, but we ask God for wants all the time. I want this, God. I need this, but we really mean want this, right? So to the degree we can separate those two and recognize that sometimes our wants are not really our needs. When we truly are asking with a humble heart, you're not going to be rebuked. And it will be given to him. It's not just going to happen. God's not just going to help you be patient. He will provide it, is the sense of that term. It will be given to him. God will give it. So understand this. Understand, this is no self-help system. This isn't a self-help system. You know what you need to do, if you want to make that sale, you want to get that job, you want to get that raise, you want to get that thing, that person, that stuff, that whatever, here's what you need. Here's the steps. You need to believe it. You need to proclaim it. You need to claim it. That's trash. It's trash. That's not the way it works. You recognize, Lord, I don't know what I need. I know what I feel like I need, but I don't know the way forward. I don't know how to interpret this. I don't know how to do this, that, whatever. But I do know that I am needy. And I think this is what I need, but I'm asking you, regardless, would you please come through and help me? I need wisdom. I need wisdom to navigate this. And God will respond, and he will provide the wisdom. Maybe not in the timing you want, maybe not in the way you want, but he's going to provide it. And he will help you navigate. So recognize your need for wisdom. Ask for wisdom. And then thirdly, believe by faith. But let him who asks, let him ask in faith with no doubting. For the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. For the person must not suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in his ways. So if you're going to ask God, ask by faith, believing that God can provide, that God will provide, that God will do what he sees fit and what's best, but do not doubt. This verse has caused all kinds of problems for people. Man, if you've ever had a loved one that's battling with a sickness, if you've ever been battling with a sickness, if you've ever had something really burden you that you just are really struggling and you're praying and so you want to say, I'm asking by faith, and you want to proclaim. And so we learn from other people that misinterpret God's word and use it in ways that is not intended, that this is like this self-help book that just gives you a bunch of like prayers that you can pray that are like little superstitious confessions that if you pray it right and you hold your face right and this is right and that's right, whatever, then it'll come through and you'll get what you want. And that's not the way this works, right? It's not the way that God provides. It's caused a lot of people to be disillusioned. I asked God to heal my grandmother. I've asked God to heal my loved one. I've asked God to heal my whatever, to save this person, to do this thing, to whatever, and he didn't do it. And so you're telling me ask God for something and he'll give it, and I'm telling you that he didn't do it. And so either God's not real or he's fake or he lied, or you flip it around and you go, you know what? The problem is I just didn't have enough faith. It must have been my faith. I just was a doubter. I just didn't have the faith. And usually we don't think that about ourselves. We just like slap that onto somebody else. Well, you need to pray with faith. If you don't have a raise, if you're not rich, if you're not healthy, if you have battled with this sickness or that sickness, well, you just don't have enough faith. It's a lie from the pit of hell. That's not true. I mean, now in James, he does say later on, some of you are sick because there's sin in your life. So, I mean, sometimes, yeah, that happens, and there's sin and other things going on, but is it because of a lack of faith? Is that really the issue? That's not what he's saying here. Let him ask in faith with no doubting, for the one who doubts is like the wave of the sea that's driven and tossed by the wind. I don't know if you've ever been seasick before. If you've been car sick is difficult. I mean, but you can put the fan on, drop the air temperature, and, kind of reposition yourself in the car. And generally, you can usually kind of power through most car sickness situations. But if you're seasick, depending on the size of the boat and the size of the waves, there's a point where there's just no hope. And I remember being a kid, I don't know how old, I must have been between 8 to 10 years old, maybe we'll say 10 years old. And my family was we went on a deep sea fishing trip, which didn't last long, off of Miami. We went out, we got out into the deep water. And the big fish are in the deep water. But the other thing is there's waves in the deep water. And it was not a calm day, and the waves were huge. And this was on a pretty big yacht that was rented out by several different people and a business. And it was huge. I mean, I remember going inside the yacht to the live-in area, and there's like some couches, and there's like a little kitchen area, and you could sit down. And I remember we got up like super early, so I was kind of tired, and my parents were like, hey, why don't you just go take a nap in there? So I'm laying down, and the boat's just rocking up and down. I can almost get seasick thinking about it. I generally don't get seasick. But, man, it's just, and I remember thinking, it's like I'm on a roller coaster. This is awesome. Oh, this is really cool. And then after a little while, I was like, I don't like the roller coaster. I'm not really. And so I said, you need to come outside. You need to look at the horizon and kind of get your eyes on something fixed. That's great advice. When you can see the horizon, but we couldn't see the horizon because the waves were too big. And so there's horizon, then there's wave, and then horizon, and then there's wave, and then there's horizon, and then the boat's going up, and it's going down, and it's going up, and it's going down. And I just remember there was a point where I got to where I was so tossed and turned by the waves and the wind and things blowing around that I was leaning over the boat, feeding the fish, and chumming, trying to help the other people, and just trying to be selfless, like we'll get the bait. I got your bait right here. And so, and I was praying. I was like, oh God, would you bring me hope. I wasn't praying for dry land. I wasn't praying for calm seas. I was praying for heaven. I'm done. I was ready to get out. And no joke. I remember praying, Lord, kill me now. I want to die now. Because I felt so nauseated and so sick that Dramamine wasn't going to fix it. There was nothing. I just needed to go to heaven. Because to go to dry land, we have to drive back, which is what we did. They drove our family back. They put us on dry land, and then they turned around and they went back and finished their great day, and we all went home. Okay, so, and I remember putting my feet on the ground. I was like, I love land. I love it. Because, here's the thing we all want. We all want certainty. We want something that's reliable. We want something that's steady. And when you're in a position where you can't see the horizon, you can't fix your eyes on what you need to be fixing your eyes on, it's very disheartening and very disillusioning, and it can get really difficult. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1 says, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen. It's the conviction of things not seen. For by it the people of old received their commendation. By faith we understand that the universe was created by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of things that are visible. So get this, God made everything we see that we rely on, that we put our hope on, our faith in, our trust in. He made all these things that quite frankly now have been subjected to being broken in a fallen world, that are all messed up. What is crooked is not going to be made straight. We live in a broken, fallen world, and yet we trust what is seen more than we trust what is unseen. Even though what is unseen, he who is unseen created everything that is seen. God has a vantage point we don't have. God sees things we don't have, we don't know. God understands what we don't understand. God has a plan. He has a purpose. There's a big picture. There's things playing out, and we need to trust him with that. And the only way you can get your equilibrium when you feel like you're on that boat and everything is going up and down and you're being tossed and turned in the waves, when you can't see the horizon with your physical eyes, you're going to have to be able to see them with spiritual eyes. And that's the only thing that's going to stabilize your life. He says, let him ask God who gives freely. Let him ask without doubting. Have belief, have confidence in God, that God will attend to your need. Have confidence that God will attend to your need, or in his superior wisdom, he will deny it. But either way, he is going to answer. For the one who doubts, to doubt is to waver. It's to be at odds within yourself. It's to be struck, have this internal disconnect where I say I believe this, but I really don't believe it because I'm doubting and I'm struggling, whatever. And so there's this division going on inside you. The one who doubts is like the wave in the sea, driven, tossed by the wind. The person must not suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord if he is double-minded, a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. Literally, a double-minded man is like a person who forsakes his wedding vows, covenant to their spouse, and chases after somebody that's not their spouse. Double-minded. You don't think, Proverbs says, you can't embrace fire to your bosom. You can't go grab some logs out of a fire, embrace them, and think that you're not going to get burned. There's not going to be some serious effects to that. And so in the same way, a double-minded man who's like, confessing and saying on one side, I love my wife, and yet is unfaithful and chasing after somebody else. And that's what we're like when we don't believe God. We're saying we believe by faith, we follow God, we're identified with God, but yet in reality, in actuality, we're pursuing after what we think is best. And we're living a life of unbelief, and we're living a life of doubt, a double-minded doubter. Believe by faith. Believe by faith. Don't be a doubter. Let me just give you one more thought on faith and believing faith, asking for wisdom. Okay, the Bible does say some things about the amount of your faith, but Jesus said to the disciples, if you had the faith of a mustard seed, you could say this mountain, move, and it would move. So it says, you of little, begins the statement by saying, ye of little faith. You have little faith. Your faith is so small. But then he says, if you just had itty bitty faith. So again, the point of faith, even in that illustration Jesus uses, is not to put the emphasis on you and your amount of faith. It is all about the object of your faith. Faith is always about the object. It's never about, can you muster enough faith? Do you have enough faith? Can you believe by faith? It's not on you. You don't have enough faith. You just need to put the little bit of faith you have in the right place. And if you do that, and you don't waver, you don't take that little mustard seed faith and cut it in half and put half of it over here in the world and half of it in Jesus, and you hedge your bets. I got both covered. No, put the mustard seed back together. Okay, let's put it all in the Jesus, I'm trusting in Jesus faith bucket. I'm asking him for wisdom. If you do that and you don't doubt, then know that God's going to come through. This tension is beautifully explained by Tim Keller. A couple quotes here for you. He said this: prayer requires and creates restful trust and confident hope. Prayer requires and creates a restful trust and a confident hope. Restful trust and a confident hope. And he goes on to say this: we must avoid the extremes. Avoid the extremes of either not asking God for good things or thinking we can bend God's will to ours. That's the tendency. It's like we don't want to ask God because he's not going to answer. Or we say, well, if I can I'm going to hold God to this, and I'm asking God to do this. And if he's really there, and if he really loves me, then he will do what I ask him to do. And as if we can bend God's arm and make him do what we think is best without acknowledging the fact that we don't always know what's best. We need to combine, I love this word, tenacious persistency. A tenacious persistency, a striving with God, with a deep acceptance of God's will, whatever it is. Whatever it is. Recognize your need for wisdom. Ask God. Ask God for wisdom. If you lack it, ask God. And we lack it, so ask God. And believe by faith. He's going to give you the wisdom. He's going to help you. He's going to provide. He's going to give you the insight. Don't doubt that. Don't doubt that. So as we wrap up, we're reminded, little parable here in verses 9 through 11 he gives us. And it almost seems out of place. It almost seems like it doesn't make sense here, but it does make sense here. And so just let me throw this at you. Verse 9, let the lowly brother boast in his exaltation. The lowly, as in he who's desperate, doesn't have much, doesn't have any savings account, any fallback plan. and the rich boast in his humiliation. Because like a flower of the grass, he will pass away. For the sun rises with its scorching heat and withers the grass. Its flower falls and its beauty perishes. So also will the rich man fade away in the midst of his pursuits. In verse 12, we'll pick up next week. But blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial. For when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life. There is a reward. There is a reward. There is a provision. God's going to come through one way or another. He's going to come through. But we need to understand that things aren't always as they appear. Things aren't always as they appear. I mean, we might use categories of this person has privilege, this person doesn't. This person is in a position of is a lowly brother, and this person is a rich person. This person needs to exalt and boast the lowly brother in their exaltation, knowing that, man, God's going to deliver. He's going to provide, and he will exalt them. And the rich person needs to recognize that, boy, don't put your faith and trust in the riches of this world, because you're going to lose them all. You can't take them with you to the next life. And so don't put your faith and trust, and don't wrap your identity into your next. Because things aren't as they appear. I said last week that our outlook often determines our outcome. What we focus on is often going to lead us in a direction that we don't want to go in. And so, in summary, how do we bring this together? Well, the cure for uncertain times, the way you get equilibrium, the way you have your needs met, the way God, you can find your assurance and your confidence in Christ that he's going to help you find joy in the midst of trials is by asking him for wisdom. Recognizing you need wisdom, you're needy, I'm needy, and neediness, our needs are not our foes, they're our friends. Because they're the doorway to God, and they lead us to a point where we're open for God to come through in ways that we're not going to experience him apart from that. And so I mentioned this quote last week, and I want to end with it. Charles Haddon Spurgeon said this beautifully, puts this all together. I have learned to kiss the waves. I've learned to kiss the waves that throw me against the rock of ages. Man, consider it joy. I mean, just add it up. Just go ahead and add it up and know that when you equal it out, what you're going to find, the bottom line, what you're going to find, when you reconcile it all and you put it all together, what you're going to find is the trials are going to lead to perseverance, and the perseverance are going to lead to you finding that you don't lack for anything because God has provided everything you need. No matter what comes your way, it's going to be all right because God's going to provide. He's going to take care of you. And so ask for wisdom. Ask for wisdom. You don't have it. I don't have it. Ask for wisdom and believe God will provide the wisdom. He's going to help you navigate it. So just walk by faith through this and trust him. Don't trust your eyes. Don't put your hope in what is seen, but trust in what is unseen. Trust in he who made everything and spoke the seen into existence, who's going to fix in what's broken in the seen world, and he's going to give us in fact, even better, he's going to throw that one aside and give us a new one that's perfect. And so trust in God who even can raise the dead. He can take our broken, decomposing bodies and he can restore them and he can raise the dead, not just spiritually, but even physically, and give us a new body. That's a good place to put our faith and trust. That's the cure for uncertain times, is to ask for wisdom and to believe by faith that God will provide it.